How do you know about the history of Philippine literatures? Come and join with me today in digging through the evolution of Philippine literatures throughout the ages. These are the different periods of Philippine literatures: pre Spanish, Spanish period, propaganda period, the revolutionary period, American period, the Japanese period, the Third Republic after the World War II, the martial law period, the Fourth Republic, and the 21st century period. First and foremost, let's check your knowledge about Philippine literatures by identifying the period in which this type of literature flourished. Are you ready? You have 10 choices from pre-Spanish to 21st century period. Number 1. Florante at Laura and Ibong Adarna. Number 2. Wattpad and Manga. Number 3. Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. Number 4. The Poem Filipinas. 5. Kahapon, Ngayon at Bukas. 6. Hook and Guerrilla Stories. 7. The Story of Edgar Hobson. 8. Chiclet and Flash Fiction. 9. Sinaculo and Moro Moro. 10. Sapula Sapote. If you are not sure about your answers, then stick with me. Let's continue checking your understanding. Identify the period in which the following happened. Essays were very popular. The general mood and tone of literatures were humor. Literary pieces were only transmitted through the mouth. Literatures were ethical and satirical by nature. Comics were slowly introduced in the publishing of Tagalog romances in series. Most stories talked about the killings of student activists. Readers could suggest the next event of the story or change the character, and reading became interactive. Printing started, and literatures were religious to spread Christianity. Writers were free to write whatever they want, even criticism against the government. And literatures were nationalistic. Again, if you are not sure of your answers, then stick around. Hi, this is Teacher L to talk about the evolution of Philippine literatures. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to click like and subscribe. Beforehand, let's have the importance of understanding literatures. According to Jenkins of 2014, literature is about humans. It gives students the sense of history, connecting from past to present. It gives them insights of their own cultures and others as well. And of course, it teaches them about life's ethics and lessons which are happening in the real world. And according to Orquiola and Lequata of 2017, literatures from a certain region in the world is a depiction of people's lives, thoughts, and feelings. The country's social, political, economic, historical, and even moral or spiritual conditions are reflected in different literary pieces. Moreover, Ebers of 2017 highlights the importance or the benefits of reading literatures. Since literature is an art and is a mirror in the world, exploring, evaluating, and analyzing its contents do not only promote critical thinking, but also foster invaluable communication skills. Let's get started. Before the Spaniards came in 1565 and backwards, there was no book. because printing was not yet introduced, and so literary pieces were only transmitted through the mouths. Those were either sung, recited, or chanted. The literatures were in the forms of folk narratives, folk speeches, and folk songs. Folk narratives are also known as mga kwentong bayan. These are myths, legends, and fables. Folk speeches are known for mga karunungang bayan, and these are in the forms of proverbs, sayings, and riddles. And folk songs, or what we call as awiting bayan, could be either a kondiman or a lullaby, or what we call as uyay. Despite the absence of printing machine, some pieces of literatures were imprinted by our Filipino ancestors, and they preserved them on fragile materials like bamboos and leaves of palms. Epics also existed, like the stories of Amaya and Indio. Literatures talked about natural phenomena and Filipino wisdom. And so storytelling served as the early means of Filipino entertainment. When the Spaniards came, there was a big change of the themes of Philippine literatures. There was a shift from worshipping of the gods and goddesses like the god of water, god of the wind, god of the nature to religious, social, and cultural lives of Filipinos. Christianity was introduced and spread during the Spanish period. Various stories about saints and their miracles were instilled by people, resulting to the fiesta celebrations everywhere in the country in honor of patron saints. Dramas were very popular during that time, and they were performed either at home or on stage. Sinaculo, Moro, and Carillo were staged formally, while Duplo and Karagatan were forms of verbal joust, and they were held at home. This reflect the linguistic talents of the Filipinos as they competed in the recitation of poems based on a given topic. Losers of Duplo were required to offer prayers for the dead, for Duplo was held during wake only for entertainment purposes to keep everyone awake. Florante at Laura and Ibong Adarna flourished during the Spanish period. Florante at Laura is written by Francisco Balagtas, and Ibong Adarna is believed to be written by Jose de la Cruz or Josing Siso. Ibong Adarna was written as octosyllabic. It was appreciated for the beauty of its plot. It is legendary and religious by nature. Passion and Sinaculo were dramatized on stage. This is about the passion and death of Christ. Comedia or Moro was also popular. This is about a love story and a struggle between Christians and the Moros. In the ending, the Moros were defeated and converted into Christianity. Tibag, on the other hand, dramatized St. Helena's search for the Holy Cross. Tibag is a religious festival celebrated in May, or it is celebrated during Flores de Mayo. Here are the important contributions of the Spanish period: spreading of Christianity, dramatization at home and on stage, the Dominicans' introduction of printing that paved way to the preservation of literary works. It is believed that Doctrina Christian is the first book printed in the Philippines, which was written by Fray Juan de Plasencia. The Dominicans were followed by the Franciscans, the Jesuits, and the Augustinians. Printing strengthened the spreading of Christianity. Literatures during the time were religious and ethical by nature. Pamphlets, novenas, and prayer books became part of Filipino literary tradition. What happened during the propaganda period? The reaction of the Filipinos against the abuses of the Spaniards was preserved in literature, which saw the occurrence of nationalist literature. Works during that time were ethical and satirical in nature. Satire is using humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize the people's abuses, corruptions, and vices. Examples of this are the novels of Dr. Jose Rizal, The Noli Me Tangere, and El Filibusterismo. The saying, pen is mightier than a sword, became famous at the time because the Spaniards were deeply wounded by Rizal's message of his novels. Marcelo H. Del Pilar introduced Diaryong Tagalog in 1882, and that Diaryong Tagalog signaled the open campaign for reform. Marcelo H. Del Pilar is remembered for the following parody: Kaingay kayo, dasalan at tuksuhan, amain namin, 10 utos ng praile. Other writers during that period were Graciano Lopez Haina, Hermenegildo Flores, and Pedro Paterno. Lopez Haina introduced and became the first editor of the newspaper La Solidaridad. La Solidaridad means the solidarity, which served as the mouthpiece of the reform movement. The contributors of the said newspapers used pseudonyms like Dimas Alang and Laong Laan for Rizal, Naning Kalipulaco Tikbalang for Mariano Ponce, Plaridel del Pilar, Joe Mapa, Jose Maria Panganiban, and Taga-Ilog for Antonio Luna. Hermenegildo Flores wrote Hibik ng Pilipinas sa Inang Espanya in 1888. In this poem, he told Spain that the friars were not doing their mission properly. Instead of sowing love, they were planting hatred to Filipinos. Pedro Paterno was also known for his collection of poems in Spanish, Sampaguita y otras poesías varias, in propaganda period. These are the important contributions of propaganda period. Exposed the abuses of the Spaniards through writing and prepared the Filipinos to fight against the Spaniards. As inspired by the novels of Dr. Jose Rizal, The Noli Me Tangere, and El Filibusterismo, Andres Bonifacio formed a union, the KKK or Kataas-Taasang Kagalang-Galangang Katipunan. Andres Bonifacio and his group led a revolt against the Spanish Empire. Andres Bonifacio and Apolinario Mabini wrote nationalistic writings in Tagalog. During that revolutionary period, Rizal was sentenced to death by firing squad, and Emilio Aguinaldo won against Andres Bonifacio. These are the important contributions of the revolutionary period. Literatures expressed love of country, or themes were nationalistic. This paved way to independence. The poem Filipinas by Jose Palma became the text of the Philippine national anthem. And this Filipinas poem, which was written in 1899, was translated into English by Camilo Osias and M. Elaine, and translated into Filipino or Tagalog by Ildefonso Santos and Julian Cruz Balmaceda. The Filipino struggles against the Spaniards ended during the Revolutionary period. The Americans helped the Filipinos in gaining independence from the Spaniards. Here are the highlights during the American period. In 1900, President William McKinley directed the Philippine Commission to make English as the medium of instructions in all public schools. So literary pieces produced during that time referred to as Philippine literatures in English. The sedition law of 1901 also affected the Filipino writers. The sedition law was prohibiting any Filipino from advocating Philippine independence and in any peaceful or overt means such as speech, printing, publication, and circulation of any material. However, this does not stop the Filipinos from writing as they clamor for change, like Juan Abad's Tanikalang Ginto and Aurelio Tolentino's Kahapon Ngayon at Bukas. These writings were considered as seditious. As a result, they were imprisoned. This American period was also the time that University of the Philippines was founded. UP is the forerunner in the use of English for higher education that allowed the publication of university paper, which became instrumental in printing works of promising writers. UP was followed by the Philippine Normal School and College Folio. Moreover, essays and poems were written, and essay was most popular. Drama and novel were hardly written during that time, since zarzuela and vernacular plays dominated the stage. These are the important contributions during the American period. Writers became innovative. Writers had the freedom to write creatively. The poets this time focused on love, life, and playwriting. They are referred to as makata ng puso, makata ng buhay, and makata ng dulaan. This period also gave way to the use of both Filipino and English language in the literary productions. And newspapers, magazines, and writers' associations all helped in the continuous growth of literatures. Let's have the Japanese period. The literary development was interrupted during this time because English was prohibited. So the writers in English were encouraged to write in Filipino. Humor, being its general mood and tone, is contradictory with the horrors experienced by the Filipinos due to the abuses done by the Japanese. These experiences resulted in literary pieces reflecting the economic and political turmoil of the period. The best short story writers of the Japanese period was N.V.M. Gonzalez for his masterpiece Lonsod, Nayon at Dagat-Dagatan. Poems such as Haiku Antanaga were introduced in this period as well. Hook and guerrilla stories were also produced in the forms of songs and plays. Moreover, a play on humor was also famous, Sapula Saputi by Francisco Soc Rodrigo. This play showed one of the Filipino men's pastimes, which is cockfighting or what we call as sabong. During the Third Republic after the World War II, the clamor for social change continued, and this was revealed by the novels of Amado V. Hernandez. During that time, comics were slowly introduced and Tagalog romances in series were published. The Filipinos were continuously influenced by the Americans. Others even opted to study in the United States and England. Some of them were Edilberto and Edith Tiempo, Francisco Arciliana, Ricardo Dimitilio, Amador Daggio, Carlos Angeles, N.V.M. Gonzalez, and Bienvenido Santos. When Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law under Proclamation 1081 on September 21, 1972, the creativity of most writers stifled. Therefore, many writers preferred to write in trivial matters for them not to be killed. The themes of most poems during that time dealt with patience, regard for native culture, customs, and the beauty of nature and surroundings. Most stories talked about the killings of the student activists during that time, like Jose de Lizard Jr., Jose F. Lacaba, the story of Edgar Hobson by Benjamin Pimentel Jr., Tibak Rising, edited by Ferdinand C. Llanes, Subversive Lives, a family memoir during the Marcos years by Susan F. Kimpo. Let's have the Fourth Republic. After the EDSA revolution, there was reinstitution of democratic processes and the economy started to grow and strong again. The dismantling of martial law and its repressive measures has made writers feel free again to write on all sorts of topics according to their mood and mode. Poems that time were romantic and revolutionary. Writers wrote openly against their criticism in the government. Filipino songs dealt with themes that were true to life, like those of grief, poverty, aspirations for freedom, love of God, of country, and of fellow men. And the last period is the 21st century. This is the period of technological migrants, Generation Z and the millennials. This is the world of modernization because of technologies. In this period, oral, printed, and technological transmissions are done in literatures. Examples are textila, graphic novel, prose novel, serialized in blogs, hypertextual poems, ebook, flash fiction, urban legend, chicklet, speculative fiction, and creative nonfiction. In the 21st century literatures, readers become part of text as they could suggest to change the plot or the characters of the story. The general periods in Philippine literatures are pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial. Pre-colonial is the pre-Spanish era. The colonial is the Spanish, American, and Japanese eras, while the post-colonial is the Third Republic, the martial law, the Fourth Republic, and the contemporary period, which is the 21st century literature period. First and foremost, let's check your knowledge about Philippine literatures by identifying the period in which this type of literature flourished. Are you ready? You have 10 choices from pre-Spanish to 21st century period. Number 1. Florante at Laura and Ibong Adarna. Number 2. Wattpad and Manga. Number 3. Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. Number 4. The Poem Filipinas. 5. Kahapon, Ngayon at Bukas. 6. Hook and Guerrilla Stories. 7. The Story of Edgar Hobson. 8. Chicklet and Flash Fiction. 9. Sinaculo and Moro Moro. 10. Sapula Sapote. If you are not sure about your answers, then stick with me. Let's check your understanding of the lesson. Identify the period in which this type of literature flourished. Number 1, Florante at Laura and Ibong Adarna. The answer is Spanish period. Number 2, Wattpad and Manga. This is 21st century. Number 3, Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. This is propaganda. Number 4, the poem Filipinas is under revolutionary period. Number 5, Kahapon, Ngayon at Bukas is American period. Number 6, Hook and Guerrilla Stories is Japanese period. 7. The Story of Edgar Hobson. This is martial law. Number 8. Chicklet and Flash Fiction. This is under 21st century. Number 9. Sinaculo and Moro Moro. The answer is Spanish period. And number 10. sa pula sa puti is Japanese period. Let's continue checking your understanding. Identify the period in which the following happened. Essays were very popular. The general mood and tone of literatures were humor. Literary pieces were only transmitted through the mouth. Literatures were ethical and satirical by nature. Comics were slowly introduced in the publishing of Tagalog romances in series. Most stories talked about the killings of student activists. Readers could suggest the next event of the story or change the character, and reading became interactive. Printing started, and literatures were religious to spread Christianity. Writers were free to write whatever they want, even criticism against the government. And literatures were nationalistic. Again, if you are not sure of your answers, then stick around. Essays were very popular during the American period. The general mood and tone of literatures were humor during the Japanese period. Literary pieces were only transmitted through the mouths during the pre-Spanish period. Literatures were ethical and satirical by nature during the propaganda period. Comics were slowly introduced in the publishing of Tagalog romance and series during the Third Republic. Most stories talk about the killing of student activists during the martial law period. The readers could suggest the next event of the story or change the character, and reading became interactive during the 21st century period. Printing started, and literatures were religious to spread Christianity during the Spanish period. Writers were free to write whatever they want, even criticism against the government during the Fourth Republic. And literatures were nationalistic during the Revolutionary period.